All right, welcome back, dear viewers. Going to do a quick video about Shadowdark and character classes. Been doing a lot of thinking about that. I wanted to share my thoughts with you about that. But before we get started, this is kind of what I do. I play games, I record myself playing those games, and then I talk about those games. I got nothing against a flip through review, but sometimes I think a well polished game still ends up being kind of waste of money, and some chintzy, cheap $3 thing you get off Drive Through RPG or Giant Slayer games could end up being a lot of fun, and you're not going to know it unless someone's willing to do the actual deep dive into it. And that's what I try to do here. So if you like that, please hit like and subscribe, the bell icon, yada yada yada. Let's get into this. So a while back, I lamented in a blog post about the challenge of bringing new players into the old school. This was before I even knew what Shadowdark was. It was long before the Kickstarter and whatnot. And there was very little really discussed about it. And the problem I identified as something, has been kind of referred to as the game within the game. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and kind of compare Wizards of the Coast, old school D&D and its retro clones, and then what Shadowdark and another game have done that I think solve this problem. So what is the game within the game? Well, it's the min-maxing character builds. It is an attempt to find a way to beat the game, to make the toughest character possible. It's like this munchkin mindset, right? I'm not necessarily opposed to people learning the rules and maximizing the rules to their benefit while they're playing the game. Got nothing against that, especially if like you're role playing. There's like a role playing reason for it, or like an in-world, in-game reason for it. But what we've seen is that players are like planning their character's life at the moment of its creation. I'll get to that in a second. This idea actually kind of started, I think, with second edition. I played a lot of that back in the day, and there were these splat books that had kits in them. This is the Complete Fighter's Handbook, and these kits were like these templates that you would place over your character class, and it would kind of help define the character a little bit, and give them a little extra bonus or an ability, and it was a way to separate and differentiate Joe Fighter from Bob Fighter. Joe Fighter might be a criminal thug. So he might have some like ability, like able to move silently or something if he's not wearing armor or something. Versus Bob Fighter, who's a Myrmidon, so he is a soldier. It was an interesting thing. I really liked it, and I've actually incorporated something like that with my Lamentations game. I'll put a link to that blog post in the description as well, so you can take a look. But yeah, that's where it started. And then since third edition, players started getting feats, unlimited multi-classing options, a plethora of racial choices and abilities to make the character that they want to make. And then with D&D Beyond, players can just plan for the future of their character. They could actually plug it in and see what it looks like. I actually think this is why the art that you've been seeing from Wizards of the Coast looks the way it does, because it's like kind of like this wild, anything goes kind of mentality versus like the old school realistic feel to the art from back in the day. Now compare that to old school character development. The emphasis is more on exploration, and I'll explain that in a second. But your progress is static. Like you gain some experience points, and then you roll for some more hit points, and then your saving throws improve. But that's pretty much it. Attack matrices improve, but not a whole lot to really plan for. What how your character changes in old school play depends upon gameplay and the things that you're doing in game. And that's where like you really don't know what's going to happen to your character, and I think that's exciting. I like that more than this like predetermined thing that you do with like 5th edition, like where you got to think about all these character builds and how you're going to do it and this, that, and the other thing. And I think what captures this the most is with 5th edition, you can do a point buy system and a sort of arrange your character stats versus rolling 3d6 down the line. Like, you don't know what you're going to be making once you start rolling 3d6. And I think that sort of exploration and discovery is sort of like the hallmark of like an old school play. Whereas new school play is really more about trying to break the game and beat the game. Maybe not break the game, but definitely beat the game. And in my blog post, I lamented, like, how are you going to get players who are used to these character builds into the old school when it's like almost polar opposite. And this is where Shadowdark and second wave OSR systems like Lion and Dragon come in. I think they solved the problem. Whether or not it's a good solution, I guess I'll leave that up to you. I think it's a good solution. But basically, at least in Shadowdark, every other level, you're going to roll on a talent chart to see how your character improves, so, you might get a bonus to attack. If you're spell casting, you might get a bonus to your spell casting roll. You might get a bonus to the relevant stat for your character. So, for example, the fighter, strength, dexterity, and constitution are important, but for a spellcaster, it might be intelligence or wisdom, right? You might get an advantage on a roll or a bonus to another ability. And I like this because while there's still this discovery and exploration of what your character is going to become, it still helps maximize your character for the role that character plays in the party. So the fighter's going to fight, and the fighter's going to get better at fighting stuff, whereas the wizard and the cleric are going to get good at that. Your thief in Shadowdark is going to get better at stealth and scouting and backstab, things like that. But you don't know what kind of a thief or what kind of a fighter ultimately you're going to become. I'd also point out too, like you can see, it's a 2d6 chart, right? So it's that bell curve. If you watched my last video, bell curves are your friend. Like, so for a fighter, there's a really good chance every time you roll on this chart, you're going to get stronger, faster, tougher. But a very, very slim chance of becoming a weapons master. I think a 2 on a 2d6 is like 2.56%. And then if you include the 12, which is also 2.56%, but that 12 allows you to choose whatever talent you want, the chance of becoming a weapon master with a second weapon is about a little over 5%, right? So, and that's interesting for world building, and I'm going to get to that now. So this is an example of what happens in Lion and Dragon. Now, Lion and Dragon is a very different game to Shadowdark. And as you can see, the table he's RPG Pundit's made for his fighter advancement, it's a little more robust. There's a lot more to it. But that's because he's designed a medieval authentic world where it's very, very, very realistic. The magic is not like D&D Vancian magic. It's more ritual based, and it's more in line with how people of the medieval era actually thought of magic. So it's a lot of summoning demons and weird things. Like playing a magister in Lion and Dragon is like the Meisters from Song of Ice and Fire. They're just really scholarly people who've like found some dark, knowledge, some forbidden knowledge that they can use. So that makes sense that you would have things like this where you get bonuses to like skills and other types of combat, because that's the world. And I think this is like a subtle point that I think is missed when people talk about this. So like Shadowdark is sword and sorcery, so keeping it a little bit more loose and not as specific, I think is a good thing, because it allows the players to just say, okay, I'm a tough fighter, and I got this one weapon master, skill or whatever, and they think off the fly, in terms of as they're adventuring. But like in Lion and Dragon, your fighter might be a knight, so horsemanship is important, right? Combat skill in specific weapons is not as important, and so all of this can go into how you define your world through the character classes. So I'm going to leave you with this. If you're into world building, and I encourage any game master to do this, and you're using Shadowdark, think about how those advancement charts can help define your world. Think about that. And again, bell curves are your friend. Go to anydice.com and check out how the percentages kind of play out, and see what you can do. Maybe you can tweak the existing classes. Maybe come up with a couple character classes that are unique to the world you're creating. But anyway, so that's all I really have. I wanted to do a quick video. I'm recovering from COVID. I feel a lot better today, but I didn't want to do anything too long. So hit like and subscribe, bell icon, and I do appreciate everyone watching. Until next time, y'all.